You're listening to the Mentors for Military podcast with your hosts, Robert Gowan, Rudy Lindsay, Mike Pritz, and Kat Kalin. So, Lex, I'm glad you're on the show. Thanks to our buddy Marciano, who has hooked me up with some really cool folks. David Rutherford, as you know, was on a few weeks back, really motivated the heck out of us. He's a super awesome guy. Really excited about you being on the show.
Well, happy to help however we can. And, you know, we've got kind of the military mafia going, so to speak. You know, Rut is one of my dear friends, and he's kind of introduced me to this whole South Florida group of military folks, including Marciano and some other guys. And you know, it's good. Everybody's still serving, finding a way to support the community in one way or another. And, you know, we take care of our own. So I'm happy to help you all.
I know a little bit about your background. You were a top agent of the mixed martial arts, and a lot of people I know today follow MMA fighting quite a bit. How is it that you got into that? Because you came out of the Corps. As I understand it, you became an attorney or a lawyer. You got your law degree, and then I think you went back to school. Is that right? And got an MBA, and then somehow you got into MMA. So how did all this kind of come into play from the time that you got out of the Corps?
Well, you know, I've been involved in martial arts my entire life in one form or another, doing as a practitioner of different disciplines. Everything from, you know, wrestling, the traditional kind of Americana form of martial arts, through Goju, karate, Krav Maga, Dutch kickboxing, you know, on and on, some jiu-jitsu. So it's always been a part of my life. Certainly when I was in the Marines, we had an emphasis on I think at the time it was called line training, which was the Marine Corps' version of, you know, hand-to-hand combat and martial arts. So practiced that quite a bit. But as I was going through my education, you know, after I got out of the Corps, I went and got an undergraduate degree and then a law degree, and worked at a firm for a few years, went and got an MBA, as you touched on. I was in a position where I could negotiate some contracts for my father, who was in entertainment for quite some time. And I negotiated a contract for my dad to appear in a Super Bowl commercial alongside MC Hammer with a company called Cash for Gold. The owner of that company has been my partner for going on 7 years now. You know, we negotiated out that contract for my dad and met each other on the set and shared a common interest in mixed martial arts, and started going to fights soon thereafterwards. And from there, you know, one day it's like, hey, I want to start sponsoring fighters with my company. I said, sure. You know, I didn't know anybody in the sport. But, you know, what Marine says no? So I found a way to get to Randy Couture, and I said, hey, man, I got a big check for you. And that was it. You know, once you're the guy that has the checkbook, everybody wants to get to know you. So we learned a lot about the business pretty quickly in about a year's time. Saw that there was an opportunity to open a sports agency. So myself, my partner Jeff, and MC Hammer launched an agency. And as you mentioned, we had about 40 or so of the top UFC fighters, guys and gals, fought for titles, you know, in the top 10, that sort of thing. And then a few years ago, my partner Jeff acquired a league called Titan FC, and he asked me to come on board to run it as the COO. So together, we have been in this crazy business for about 7 years, and you know, we've used it as a platform to support the military. Jeff's been very gracious in affording me the opportunity to serve our community.
Okay, so you just like brushed over several different things I got to jump back to. First off, your dad is Ed McMahon, which a lot of people probably know from The Tonight Show and Star Search. And then you talked about MC Hammer. And, you know, so I mean, there's a lot of connections there that you had certainly within the past. And I think that, you know, mentioning that, it was like, wow, okay, MC Hammer, and you just kept rolling. But these are big celebrity names. These are big-time people and stuff. How did MC Hammer end up getting into MMA?
Well, he was in that commercial with my dad.
Yeah.
And he also was a big fan, and he had known Jeff, my partner, for quite some time. And, you know, Jeff said, hey, listen, I want to get you guys involved in doing this company. And we both said yes. And, you know, next thing you know, I was partners with MC Hammer.
That is
Bam. There you go.
That is crazy.
But, you know, what's interesting what's interesting is, you bring up the fact, and I think it's part of the reason I do kind of gloss over it. I'm kind of humble, and and it's out there very publicly who my dad is, but I'd never try to bring it up. But I think also one of the reasons is that more important than being an entertainer and the icon that he was in the entertainment industry, and the same for Hammer, is they're military men. Hammer served in the Navy for I think 7 years, and my dad did 23 years as a Marine Corps colonel and the fighter pilot, flew the Corsair and flew 85 combat missions in World War II in Korea. That was our relationship, was that of the military. It wasn't that he was Ed the entertainer. It was that he was Ed the colonel, who I saluted and called colonel for a very long time.
Now, you were an enlisted guy, right, when you were in the Marine Corps?
Yep.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Worked hard for a living, man.
Yeah, I hear you. I guess I was going to say so did all of us, but Rudy did go the route of being a chief warrant officer, so.
Yeah, I took the easy way. Took the easy path.
You're smart to do that.
I understand, too, though, you have a relationship that you originally started on with the MMA with Nick, who is the founder and CEO of Ranger Up, of the apparel shop and everything.
Yep. Yeah, Nick is one of my best friends. He started Ranger Up about 10 years ago now, and we've been friends almost since that point. And we took an idea called Train the Troops MMA, where we would bring together fighters and we would go to bases and train them MMA as part of their pre-deployment package. We did that originally with about 1,800 Marines out of Camp Pendleton, El Toro, and Yuma. Miramar. El Toro closed down at that point. It was Miramar and Yuma. And actually, one of the guys that was part of that 1,800 Marines was a gunnery sergeant who's one of my longtime friends. And we trained these guys before they went down range. So it was really a very rewarding experience to be able to give some training to folks that would be able to use it. And my buddy, gunnery sergeant at the time, now a chief warrant officer, Cesar Espinosa, he said it was really a valuable part of their pre-deployment training. And he was grateful for the opportunity. And we brought in guys like Tim Kennedy, Jorge Rivera, Gray Maynard, lots of big UFC names to help train these folks up before they rotated out. And then we've kept that concept going. Every time we're anywhere close to a military base, we do a Train the Troops MMA seminar for about 4 hours. Done it with the 82nd Airborne. Done it with quite a few different Marine units from Camp Pendleton and Lejeune. And I recently just got back from an Armed Forces entertainment tour in the Middle East, which was quite an experience, where I took 4 of our fighters downrange to train the folks up and give them, more than anything, just a little bit of a morale boost. They were short seminars, so we weren't necessarily imparting a ton of knowledge to them, but just the fact that we were there, taking the time out to spend time with them, I think was appreciated. But more than anything, it was a great reward for us to be able to do it.
That's crazy. So take us through, when you talk about training the troops and it's a 4-hour block, take us through basically what it is that you're teaching them prior to their deployment. Well,
so when we first started, Tim, I'm not sure if y'all are familiar with Tim Kennedy or not, but
oh yeah,
Tim is an amazing man, and one of the elements of his background is he's a Green Beret and Ranger qualified and sniper and on. His list of accolades and accomplishments are in the military are very long, but he's also a UFC fighter. So we looked at how could we incorporate mixed martial arts to help the warfighter, if they were in a hand-to-hand environment, get back to their tools. So all the moves that we focused on were really designed if, say you're in the stack and you're going through the threshold of the door, and a enemy soldier's there, they take your weapon. Something happens, you're in stuff. You've got to get back to your tools. How do you get back to your sidearm or your long gun? And so that's what these moves were all about, was getting back to your tools. And I think guys found them really impactful. But it was really from lessons learned that Tim had experienced from all his deployments to Afghanistan and Iraq, and then thinking about how to incorporate what he's learned in the mixed martial arts world.
That's crazy, and I could definitely see how that'd be most useful. And and it's a shame that there's not a program, when you think about it, already within the system to be able to take lessons learned and do that kind of stuff, and then put that back into the training. But I think it's great that it should be broader, though. You know what I mean? I mean, you guys should be on like a rotating tour to all different units, Benning and Bragg and Stewart and wherever, teaching that kind of stuff. That sounds fascinating.
It is great stuff, and I'll tell you, the combatives program, I think, does a good job, and what the Marines have, and McMahon now, does a good job as well. But that's very kind of rudimentary, and I think what we had done with Train the Troops is we bridged the gap and took those important, ideas and concepts and tactical challenges, and applied truly some of the knowledge for some of the best fighters in the world to come up with a curriculum that was really practical and made sense. And it's been, honestly, one of the great things that I've been able to do is continue that training every time that a Titan event is somewhere close, or I've got an opportunity to take fighters somewhere. I take that curriculum with us, and we focus on some of those skills so that we can continue to impart that knowledge.
So Lex, do you compete, or are you more graduated into the training?
At this juncture, I haven't competed in a very long time. I never competed professionally. Trained a ton. It's kind of always been what I've done, but I got into the business side of it. And,
Gotcha.
Because I'm on the business side, and we have a very large platform. We're partners with the UFC, and what we do for Titan, they are our distribution platform. So they stream our content on UFC Fight Pass. I'm in a unique position that I can take my personal passion philanthropically, which is to serve the MilVet community, and get the word out, because every fight we have, we get hundreds of thousands of people tuning into our fights. So we highlight charitable organizations that we're partnering with, such as A Hero Foundation and SAL, Special Operations Wounded Warriors. We create awareness about them. We show videos about them. We do social media campaigns to help them raise proceeds. So I'm in this unique, position where I'm able to raise awareness about these issues, but also help bring training with our athletes, because we've got these high-level athletes, being able to bring training to the war fighters, and also to the veterans, man. Like we took a group of veterans with one of the foundations I'm a part of, the A Hero Foundation, and we took them to South Africa on a hunting trip. But we brought Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, who's a UFC fighter, a very high-level guy, with us. And, he trained with the guys, just hung out with them. It made such a difference for them. And we've done the same thing we have a ranch out in Alabama, or a farm out in Alabama, where we bring all types of veterans into, and we bring in fighters, and they teach, they'll do a seminar, Train the Troops seminar, and then we bring in a person who helps with, the psychological issues as well. So we try to bring all these things together, and I just happen to be in a unique position where I have this platform, and I have access to these, amazing athletes who are willing to share their time.
That's awesome, man. And the philanthropical approach, I mean, there's something that you can't put a price on that, man. And guys like yourself, myself, Kat, Robert, we've in essence passed the torch to the next generation of warriors. And all of us are extremely passionate about doing something to give back. And it's not a self-satisfaction thing. It's more, doing what you can to help those guys continue with their excellence. And that's something, even through my defense contracting work, through the Special Ops Survivors, which is another charity group that I support with my fishing platform, and even Mentors for Military, which of course Robert stood up with these podcasts. It's all about giving back and helping these guys become better at what they do. And
sure.
you can't put a price on that, man. It's amazing.
Well, I mean, I think that one of the things that you see is that, there's lots of people in our nation who are willing to donate a little bit of money, or say that put a yellow ribbon on their tree or their car or whatever. But man, they're not willing to, or they just don't know how to roll their sleeves up and really help the veterans. And so like we've always done through our active service, and as we transition out, it's incumbent upon us to continue to serve. And the folks that maybe enter a different station in life where they're able to leverage a platform or donate a lot of their time or help raise funds or whatever it may be, and if we don't do it, no one else will.
That's right.
So it's our responsibility. I think it's a shared responsibility, and that concept of still serving, man, that's real.
Lex, I think you nailed it just now, like saying, if we don't do it, then no one else will. And it's so true, because even the guys that you don't serve with, they're still your family, and like I was just thinking when you're talking about all your training or whatever, and the feedback is so uplifting when you actually hear some like great stories that came out of what you've been doing. And if you could like just enlighten us with maybe some guys came back and said, hey, like you saved my life, like training me how to do this, or I was able to, combat mental difficulties with everything that you've taught me. So like if you had any like awe experiences like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's certainly been quite a few over the years. I think what stands out for me is, we were just in the Middle East I took 4 Titan fighters, and we were supposed to go to Kuwait and Iraq, and we landed in Kuwait, and we were at a base called El Jabber, and we did a seminar, a meet and greet, and it was a base where I think there was a 26 Mu was there, and these Marines were on about a 30-minute lead time where they would have to spin up. So everybody's walking around fully kitted up, their weapons, and they had to be ready to respond and get in theater to Iraq within 30 minutes. The next day, one of the guys that we had met was killed in Iraq. Staff sergeant. This was not long ago. It was a staff sergeant that was killed out of a fob from an ISIS attack. And we ended up, and there was another event that occurred, and then the Brussels bombings occurred. Mm-hmm. So they ended up pulling our visas to let us go into Iraq, which was really upsetting to me, because I really wanted to be, at the far tip of the spear to be with the folks who really, I felt needed it. But what was really enlightening to me was we still had, roughly 2 weeks of a tour to do, and we had to rearrange things because most of our time was supposed to be in Iraq. So we went to all the bases in Kuwait, and including back to El Jabber, where that staff sergeant had been, and trained with a new group. And we trained with some of the guys that had been with the Mu Marines that had gone into Iraq. And, they said more than anything, it helped them cope with the loss of the staff sergeant and just the reality of what they were dealing with, because it gave them a moment in time where they didn't have to be on point. They could just be themselves. And it let them know that somebody from home cared and was willing to come out and dedicate their time and just come out. I mean, we all been deployed. We all know what it's like, man. It's not fun. And even, Kuwait necessarily isn't dangerous per se, but, if you're at a base staging point, it sure as hell is, because, the next thing you know, you're downrange. So I think that was one of the, more recent things that was really fulfilling to me, was to see that in the wake of that tragedy, we were able to provide some sort of a cathartic experience.
That brings it back home, because when I was in Afghanistan and Ashley died, and I was working with the Rangers over there, and with their mentality, it's so drive on. You just you lose guys, we're gonna lose guys, we know that's gonna happen. and you just have to, Charlie Mike and keep going. And I also worked with a Delta troop over there, and I remember I had a sergeant major that came up and he's like, hey Kat, like, let's talk about it. Like, let's decompress a little bit. And I take that moment for me, like, that, kind of put things in perspective and grounded me. So with you saying, you kind of let that's what happened with those guys that you worked with. Like, it brought them back to center, I think, like, in the long term, that moment is going to be so beneficial for them mentally and physically, just, their life perspectives, and especially going, having to go into battle, whenever they may be called. So the impact of that is just it's incredible. And we always talk about, like, we need to take care of our guys, like, when the events happen, so they don't get this buildup of stress and then, have to go through all of these mental issues and alcohol and drug abuse. So I just, like, that's amazing. And I really appreciate you guys and everything that you're doing for them, because it means so much.
No, thank you. What's the cool thing about it is we were able to galvanize not just, the handful of, I took 4 fighters with me, and none of whom had served in the military. And they gave of their time freely and were super excited to go. But I also was able to reach into the MMA community to some of our corporate partners. We took over 6,000 pounds of gear that was donated.
Wow.
Everything from mats to, kettlebells, to strength and conditioning equipment, to gloves, tie pads, mitts. So we were giving them tools. We were giving them some training, and then we were giving them some tools that they could use after we left. And, that was one of the things. I mean, I'm planning another trip for the September timeframe to head to Kuwait, Iraq, and Djibouti. And same thing, my garage is already getting stacked full of stuff from our corporate partners who are donating all this gear for us to take down. And, it is cool to see that, when you put the call out and you show people how they can help, that they will, and then what that translates to and how it impacts the individual, like Kat was saying, like, that's going to be a moment that, will resonate with them and hopefully help them for the long haul. And it was cool to bring all those pieces together.
Well, you can see how much of an impact it made on Kat, and I've heard him actually mention that story on other podcasts. So, and I'm sure, as she mentioned, the same types of things that you're doing for these guys and gals, to be able to take those moments away from all that's around them and, have that experience. Not to mention, it's a little bit like a USO experience, but yet you're also giving them information and knowledge that they can use at the moment, in a combat situation, but it takes them away from it at the same time. So it's kind of a combination of both, of a USO experience plus a knowledgeable experience. It's very cool the way you're able to do that.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a great experience. And, we try to, I bring guys to our events whenever we can. It's funny, as we're sitting here chatting now, I'm getting messages coming in. A Navy SEAL buddy of mine, he's got a group of his shipmates that, have transitioned out, and they're dealing with some stuff. So I've got a whole table full of SEALs that's going to be at this our upcoming event on June 10th. So, we try to find ways to continue to help and just give guys a moment of pause, man, just guys and gals to be able to enjoy life a bit and realize that no matter what they've gone through, life's good, man. You're above dirt,
There you go.
One of the things that we try to do in each of the podcasts, too, is talk about service and after the military. So many folks get off of active duty and, they forget that was probably the biggest thing that at least kept them there or kept them grounded or whatever, was that sense of service, and the service to their brothers, to their sisters and comrades in arms, the service to their country. And they tend to forget that when they come off active duty. And I think what you're trying to tell them, too, is that there are other avenues that they can take their passion and apply it and reach back and help those that are coming up. I mean, you were able to do that with the passion of the things that you enjoyed and your experiences and combine the two together. Why do you think it's so important for those that are coming off active duty to continue that sense of service?
I think that there's several reasons. One, I think there's a very selfish reason, which is it allows, I think, for some self-healing to be around people that are similarly situated. And that's being selfish is okay. It's not a bad thing. But I think that the other part of it is what we've already touched on, which is there's this real need to continue to serve, so that, because if we don't do it, others won't. You know, I think back to what galvanized me to get engaged. Robert, I can't recall if I shared this story with you when we chatted the other day, but 9/11 happened. I was studying to take the bar exam. I'd already graduated law school a few months beforehand, and I was, spending 15, 16 hours a day trying to figure out real property law and whatever it was. It was a miserable experience. Then 9/11 happened, and that day I was at the recruiter's office trying to get back on active duty. And, I went to MEPS, got my physical, and I was set, man. I was ready to head back, and they found that I had a degenerative eye disease that I'd had since I had been on active duty. And it just manifested itself because I'd had it my whole life. It just had gotten, I guess, it progressed to a point where I could no longer pass the eye exam. And then they identified what the problem was. And so I was precluded from returning to active duty, which was, for me, very devastating. So when I say this is selfish, it really helped me cope with that reality I was faced with, because I said, if I can't do this, how am I going to continue to serve? Because that was what the emotion I was dealing with is, my nation's going to war, I need to serve. And I can't do it in the capacity that I was used to. So I had to reimagine what it meant to serve. And I was doing that because I wanted to help my brothers and sisters, but I also wanted to address this deep-rooted passion that I had to help. And that was selfish. But I got through it, and I found a way by getting involved philanthropically and by working on what was an issue to me. I've helped a lot of other people, and I think that is kind of the way that it should go. You have to take care of yourself so you're well suited to take care of others.
Lex, what do you think the driving tenet is, or the driving character trait is, behind folks like yourself to get up off your duff and do something? Even to the point that, like you stated, you had difficulty with the serving part because of the vision problem. What do you think it is that gets people to do something?
I got one word for you: love.
There you go, man. Right on.
It's what we as men and women serving our nation are asked to do, and do willingly, is significant. And over the past 15 years, and over the millennium, obviously, but certainly for our generations, over the past 15 years, has been crystallized. There is no greater love than taking care of your brother or sister in arms, being there for them. And you may not even like them, man, but when the bullets are flying and times are rough, man, that's your brother, that's your sister. You're going to do whatever it takes, and if it even means sacrificing yourself. So when I think about why people continue their efforts post active service, I'm drawn back to that simple singular word: love. They do it because of the love that they felt, that I think is very difficult to replicate. In fact, I do not believe you can replicate that feeling of camaraderie that you gain through service in the military. It's just a unique experience. And I think it's one of the things that folks struggle with as they transition back to the civilian world, is how to have that sense of that unity of purpose, of shared mission, but of pure love. I mean, at the end of the day, people may not want to acknowledge it for what it is, but man, when you're willing to lay your life down for someone that you don't even know or you don't even like, just because they do the job that you do as well, that's love.
Yeah, that says a lot about somebody.
Absolutely. So I think that people identify it and they say, listen, I'm going to continue on, and this is how I'm going to continue that emotion.
And that is, you just nailed it, because I was just thinking, like, so many guys and gals, myself included, we come back and we crave for that feeling again. And I don't think we know how to identify it, or we don't want to identify it as love, because, it may sound a little cheesy, or, we're heart chargers, we go to war, whatever. But, that's exactly it. And I think so many vets, we come back and we struggle, and we just don't know where we can fill that void. And, on another podcast, Mike and I were talking, it's like, it's a different love, because we may have the struggles with our families because we don't understand, it's just not the same. But I think, if we could just, as vets, when we come back and realize, like, that is what it is, it's love, and that is exactly it, and that we need to hold on to it instead of create this burden and not want to, project it to our families or people that may not understand. But if we were to do that, I think just, all around the transition, especially coming back with our families, would be it would improve so much. And, just to say what it is and label it as it is, instead of trying to dance around it, I think that would be so beneficial. So that, yeah, it's truly incredible just what one word could really do for you.
Absolutely.
There are a lot of people that are coming off active duty that are probably going to be listening to this, or even veterans that just recently separated, that's trying to, they're trying to determine what is it that I'm going to do when I get off active duty. I don't really know what I want to do. I was doing whatever it was within the military, and now I'm coming back. But I think what you're providing is that whether it's, as a hobby or it's employment that you're getting paid for, take what it is, this love or this passion that we're talking about, of providing service and helping brothers and sisters, and figure out what you're really good at. For you started getting into something that you enjoyed watching, experiencing, whatever have you, and you applied those things back to give back to the military, to your brothers and sisters. I think that's what we're really talking about here. It's trying to find what your niche is, what it is that kind of motivates you and what your passion is, and whether it's a hobby or an employment, do it. Because you're going to feel better for it.
Absolutely.
When you were with some of the guys over there and, serving on this last trip and everything, what was some of the takeaways you mentioned these guys had that never had served that came along with the trip? I'm sure they were probably just blown away by the impact that they didn't even realize how much they would have on individuals, and probably even having a sense of service themselves to want to give.
Yeah, no, I think that was the case. One of the guys that was with us was Pat Healy, UFC vet, who is now fighting for us at Titan. He's a former Titan champion, lost his belt. He's fighting for Titan again on June 10th for the belt again. And this was Pat's second time doing an AFE tour. He did Afghanistan, I think back in 2010 when he was part of the UFC. And he said, listen, that experience woke me up to understanding what it is that these guys and gals are sacrificing, and how austere the environments can be in that they're, asked to serve. And, I think universally from Pat to the other guys that were with us, the one, I think, way to kind of summarize it was they were all humbled. They learned so much about what we as military folks do, and what it is to be away from home and be in kind of harm's way and laugh about it. And, I think that was one of the things that impressed them the most was they, as we all know, military folks have a very macabre sense of humor because it's a coping mechanism.
Right.
And the guys were blown away by it, but I think that's, again, they were humbled by the experience because they got to see all of this that they had no idea about before.
Now, you had mentioned that you're sitting on 4 boards of nonprofits, and you kind of highlighted a few of those. I'd really like to give you the opportunity to explain a little bit about each of the different nonprofits that you're engaged with and what it is that they do in service back to our military.
Yeah, absolutely. So kind of give you the thumb sketch of each. First is the Sean Brock Foundation. It's very timely with Memorial Day having been yesterday, because I posted about Sean. Sean was one of my fraternity brothers, and he was a Marine Corps captain, an amazing man. And, he was a Mustang infantry guy. He was in Ramadi. In 2005, February 2nd, he was killed. So a group of my fraternity brothers and his family, he had a twin brother and a sister, we started the Sean Brock Foundation to perpetuate his legacy. What we really kind of get after is this idea, because Sean had gone and gotten his master's and was actively teaching other and mentoring other of his Marines to go out and get more of an education. And so we provide scholarships to the families of fallen military through the Sean Brock Foundation. And we have quite a few events every year that we use to create awareness as well as fundraising. I serve on the board of the A Hero Foundation with one of my dear friends, Captain Lee, now Major, just recently promoted, active duty Marine Major Lee Stuckey. He was a sergeant in Fallujah, became an officer, went to Afghanistan, ended up burying a lot of his Marines, unfortunately, and he himself was blown up, suffered TBI and PTSD at a pretty significant level, and one day he was home, back at Camp Lejeune, and he was looking at the business end of a 45, about to pull the trigger, and his phone rang, and it said, "Mama." He answered the phone, and he started crying, and he told his mom what he was about to do, and she said, "Son, come home, and come to the farm in Alabama, and, let's just take some time." And what Lee did was he ended up hanging out and spending time hunting and fishing with veterans from World War II, from Korea, from Vietnam, all these different wars from years before, and it was really helpful for him. And he realized that part of his therapy was being around similarly situated folks, because he could finally open up and talk and unburden himself. And so he started the A Hero Foundation so that he could help continue that legacy. And we've helped at this juncture. And soon after he started, he asked me to join the board, which, I was humbled to do and honored. But we've brought on trips, I think the number is 762 folks that we've taken to everything from Pearl Jam concerts to Zac Brown band concerts to UFC fights to hunting and fishing trips, literally all over the world. I mentioned we took some folks to South Africa a couple of years ago. And what we've learned is that we put these folks in fun environments and put them around similarly situated people. And, it's interesting. Someone who hasn't served can be empathetic, but they truly don't understand.
Yeah.
So they aren't necessarily the best equipped to help someone cope with what they've dealt with. But someone who's stood in the boots, who's been downrange, who understands what it's like, next thing you know, there's this degree of comfort. We call it screen porch therapy, where, guys and gals are sitting around together and they're like, a civilian isn't going to say to a triple amputee, "Hey man, when'd you get hit? What happened?" Like, it's like taboo. You don't say it.
Right.
But we're brothers and sisters, so, hey, dude, you tell me right now what happened, man, because you know what? I'm going to tell you what happened with me. I was driving down the road. We just left the fob, and boom, I couldn't hear. And next thing you know, we have a great story of Sergeant Aaron Alonzo and Corporal Nathan Chandler, who's at the time Lance Corporal. They were in Afghanistan, and I think they were 1-9, The Walking Dead, if I remember correct.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
They were in Afghanistan, and Sergeant Alonzo was out as a ground guide as they're out looking for mines on a mine sweeping patrol, and Corporal Chandler was up in the turret, and Aaron stepped on a mine, an IED, lost both legs, lost a testicle, significant damage. And so Corporal Chandler gets out of the vehicle, runs over, and he's trying to administer life-saving aid, and Sergeant Alonso looks up to him and he says, "Hey man, I found it." You know, even in that horrible condition that he was in, you know, he used humor to help him.
Right.
But and that's poignant. But where it becomes really amazing is fast forward now. Both these guys, Corporal Chandler got blown up about a month later, and they were both at Wounded Warrior Battalion. One was East Coast, one was West Coast. 2 years, 3 years down the road. And A Hero, we got together and we decided that we were going to take a group of fighters to go see Stephen Wonderboy Thompson fight in Las Vegas. And we put it up to the Wounded Warrior Battalions and said, listen, you guys hold a board or whatever it is you want to do to find a way to recognize the most deserving member that would be interested in coming to this event. And, you know, we'll pay the dime on it, and, you know, but you tell us who to bring. So each of these guys, Sergeant Alonso and Corporal Chandler, are selected by Wounded Warrior Battalion, but on opposite coasts. So they have no idea. They show up at the airport. We're picking them up. These guys have not seen each other since the day on the battlefield that Alonso was blown up and said, "Hey, man, I found it." We brought them together. God's providence, you know, helped us be there, and it was an amazing experience. And you want to talk about cathartic, man?
Oh yeah.
These two kids who had been dealing with so much over the past 3 years. Alonso's sister had killed herself literally the week before our event.
Oh.
And you know, he was himself contemplating, and you know, then he got the news that he was the guy that got to go on this trip. And guess what? There's his buddy. Man, they're doing great now. They're doing amazing.
Oh, that's incredible.
And that's the power of what we do. And it's the reason why it's stories like that are the reason why I'm so passionate and why I'm blessed to have a business partner who understands that I not only have a passion, but I have a responsibility to help these people, these veterans. And he gives me the latitude to exercise our platform in a way that allows us to bring awareness, raise funds, all those great things to help out, man. So then there's Special Operations Wounded Warriors. Actually, I'm not on the board with them, but I help out quite a bit, and we have them as a featured partner with Titan. So they're in the cage. We do highlight packages for them, help raise proceeds. Just really believe in what they're doing. And then the last one is the Mighty Oaks Foundation, which is a faith-based organization run by my buddy who's a Marine Recon guy, and also one of my former clients, Chad Robichaud, who fought professionally for World Series of Fighting and some of the other local shows. And, you know, they're out based in California, and the idea is they bring guys and gals in, and they give them kind of, you know, the tools to help in the transition, but they come at it from a faith-based perspective.
Sure. I love what you had mentioned earlier about, what did you call it, the front porch counseling?
Screen porch therapy.
You know, a lot of times the counselors that help with PTSD or TBI and those types of things are individuals that may not have served and may not understand. So having that kind of therapy and the ability to talk with somebody who does get it and has been there, I think has to be very therapeutic.
Yeah, that's critical.
Well, you know, I agree with that. And so that's why we do this idea of having folks together, but we also bring in specialists. We bring in Dr. Carrie Elk of the Elk Foundation, who really has the technical skills in dealing with PTSD and dealing with veterans. And then you've just got the brotherhood, you know, the sisterhood. We all we're qualified because we've been there, done that.
Mm-hmm.
And you bring those two together, and I think that's where you get the healing.
Lex, my hat's off to you, brother. I mean, you're doing an amazing job, and you know, continue the effort by all means. You got mad love and respect here from this end, and when I get down to Florida mid-July, we'll have to hook up and grab a beer or something, man.
Yeah, I love that, Rudy. I appreciate that very much, man. And I'll help you with the transition in, man. And I heard you talk about fishing, so I'll make sure we go get some lines with somewhere.
Oh, yeah.
Everything that you said and everything that you're doing for vets, you know, they always say we take care of ourselves, and that is so true. And I I just appreciate everything that you're doing for our vets, and it's truly incredible. And you are saving lives every day, and I just thank you so much. Thank you.
Thanks, Kat.
Yeah. Ditto from me. I mean, what you're doing and giving back in service, and I think the message that you stated within this podcast is, exactly what a lot of guys and gals are probably searching for. They're going to listen to this and they're going to go, okay, now through this and hearing, Lex talk about his background and what he's done, I can now see myself in whatever, doing this, or maybe what if I did this and applied it back. And sometimes it can be something really small at the moment that you don't know where it's going to go, but the fact that you're doing it is you don't realize the impact that it's going to make on the individuals that you're reaching out to. And even if it's very small or you think insignificant, you're making an impact on someone else's life somewhere. So I definitely encourage people to go out and find that sense of service, find their passion, marry those things together. And like I said, whether it's a hobby or employment, Lex, you're living proof that you can find ways to combine those things together.
Yeah, absolutely, man. When you've got passion, great things can happen.
Is there a page or something that we can share with our listeners of where they could go to learn a lot about these various different organizations that you're supporting?
Yeah, you can go to titanfighting.com, and there is on that's our fight league where we're partners with UFC. There is links to A Hero as well, which is just simply aherousa.com, and SAO, which is SAOcharity.com, and the other organizations are on there as well. So I would say, go to titanfighting.com, check that out, and from there'll be a path to learn more about these other organizations.
Great. Thanks again, Lex, for being on the show.
My pleasure. You all take care and have a great day.
You too.
Thanks, buddy. Appreciate it.
Please be sure to follow us at iTunes, leave a rating and your comments. And if you don't have an Apple product, no worries. You can follow us at SoundCloud, download the app. And if you're on Twitter, be sure to follow us there at Mentors4MIL.